Hi guys, and welcome to Everybody Arts. I'm Mr. Matt, and today we're going to be watching these guys do mosaics. It's Aunt Sheri, Miss Shawn, Eric, and Emma, and they're going to be working on some mosaics using actual glass tiles and using all the materials that go along with that kind of a project. And I'll explain the supplies in a minute, and it'll be fun to watch how they do it. So I think you guys are going to like this one. First, let's talk about the supplies. The first time you buy them, they can be a little expensive, so if you haven't done mosaics before, see if you can find somebody that's done them, if you have a relative or a friend that you can borrow the supplies from. Now, if you don't have anybody to borrow from, you can always buy a kit. Aunt Sheri had a kit from before, and I think that's where we got our coasters. I think those are like 4" by 4" metal coasters. They came in this kit by Diamond Tech, and the kit also included all your glue, your grout, the tiles. The only complaint I saw in online reviews for this kit was that the tiles were only square, rectangle, and they didn't include anything to cut them. So we didn't use those tiles. We used the tiles that Aunt Sheri had brought separately. They were square and triangle glass tiles. She had everything else on hand, and since she does larger pieces, you also used other things that weren't in the kit, and those were things like the glue here, which was Weld Bond. It's waterproof, non-toxic, eco-friendly glue. We also used pre-mixed grout that she had, and a tile sealer that seals the tile in case, like if you use the coaster, if you spill on it, it's not going to stain the grout. It also shines it up and makes it look really pretty when you're finished. Again, a lot of her mosaics, she had done bird baths before, things like that. So all these supplies she had on hand from doing larger projects. A small kit, if you're going to do something tiny, is a good way to start. And there's lots of kits available. This is just the kit that she had on the table. That's the only reason I'm showing it to you. I'm not recommending anything. Look around, see what you like, or again, borrow items from family or friends. So this is the first project we did while we were at Aunt Sheri and Uncle Lee's, and it was a lot of fun. These guys were concentrating so hard on what they were doing. They were planning out their coasters by, pulling in the colored tiles and placing them, making geometric patterns, trying to figure out how to make those patterns, and figuring out what color combinations worked for them. These three guys, they haven't really done anything like this before, so they were really concentrating, and there wasn't a whole lot of chatter going on, so I'm probably going to speed through a lot of this and explain what they're doing as we're going through it.
I never did it where I planned it. I just started gluing it. It's weird. I'm like,
Oh yeah, if it was me, I'd probably have to plan it out and pick the colors that I wanted first, I think. Basically, the first step right here is they were picking out their colors, laying them out, and making sure that they had all the pieces that they needed to fit. And then once they had those, they would go through and glue them. And when you glue them in, that's where you use the Weld Bond or the craft glue, whatever you have and whatever you're using, or whatever's recommended to you. And you glue those pieces in after you have it set up. Here we see Eric and Emma actually gluing, and Eric is doing it differently than Emma. Once he had all of his tiles set up, he borrowed his mom's phone and took a picture of his coaster, and then took all the tiles out, and he's putting them in one by one and leaving space in between like we had just mentioned. Emma she left most of the pieces inside of her tray, and she's pulling them out one by one and gluing them back in. She doesn't want to mess up the pattern. She wants to be able to see the pattern that she did originally. That's how she preferred to work. And then Miss Shawn worked pretty much the same way as Emma did, pulling them out one by one to glue them back in after her pattern was already created. As Aunt Sheri mentioned earlier, she just starts gluing and doesn't think about the patterns or try to match a pattern. Now you have to remember that when you're going to have to grout these later, what the grout does is it goes in between the tiles and it holds those tiles in place.
Oh, and the other thing is,
Push it down.
Is to try to have a little space in between each thing, because if you don't have a little space, the grout, which is the stuff that holds it together, it's this stuff, and it's in a tub, and it's like, I'll show you. You can go to the bird bath over there too if you want to get an idea.
And Sheri mentioned looking at the bird bath for an example. This is the bird bath she was talking about, and as you can see in between all the tiles, there are lines, little gray lines, and all those gray lines started out as spaces in between the tiles. When you glue them down, you have to leave that much space in between each tile because later on when you grout, which is like with your fingers and then you wipe it off with a wet sponge, if you don't leave spaces, then you're not going to have any room to push that grout in, and that grout really holds the tiles down. Even though you glued them, the grout really holds on to those.
Yeah, we spread it all around with our finger and make sure every little place gets full.
Here everybody's ready to begin grouting. We had to let the glue dry overnight before we began putting anything in here because you want that to cure. You don't want loose tiles or them popping out because you didn't let the glue dry. Uncle Lee has a bowl over there with pre-mixed grout, and he's just plopping a spoonful of grout on top of everybody's coaster, and they're just taking their fingertip and working the grout in between all of the spaces on the tiles that they left on their coaster. So you want to make sure you rub it in and get it in all of the gaps and spaces. Make sure that it's all even, and then you're going to take a damp sponge and you're going to wipe off the excess that's on top of the tile. You don't want to wipe out any grout in between. You're just trying to wipe off the top. So you just gently wipe it with the damp sponge. If you pull out any excess grout, you can always start over. It's okay to have it a little bit below the edge of the tile, but not too low. Again, if you need to add more, that's okay. Not a big deal. Just keep going until you got it about right, and then you have to let that dry overnight. Next morning, after the mosaics had time to dry overnight, Aunt Sheri sprayed them all with a tile sealer. Now that helps shine the tiles and makes them look a little nicer when they're done, but it also protects them. It makes it so that if you spill something on it, you can wipe it off with water, and it doesn't allow anything to sink into the grout and stain it if you're drinking something dark. It just helps preserve them better. So it's just a nice touch. It's not something that's included in most kits, and it's not something that everybody does, but it's just a nice thing to do to preserve your artwork. And that's the last step. So yeah, you spray it on, you wait about 15 minutes or so. You have to read the directions on the bottle of whatever you bought, and then you wipe it off with a paper towel and let that sit for a little while, and then you're done. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the mosaic that you made, and if you didn't make one, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to have another video coming up soon with a paper mosaic that we're going to make based on a bird bath that Aunt Sheri made. I hope you watch in the next 2 weeks when I post that one. All right? Be good to each other, take care, and we'll talk to you soon. All right? Bye-bye.